We're on Long Island with Congressman Lee Zeldin and Donato Panico, who's an unsung hero of the recovery and the unification, really, in the aftermath of 9/11. Donato and Congressman Zeldin, thank you for coming in today. Well, it is your office, but thank you for meeting with us. Donato, I want to ask you right away about your story and, tell me about what 9/11 means to you.
What does it mean to me? It's the biggest heartbreak that I've ever experienced, and a tough day. It's a tough day, and it's a tough week. This week is tough. Once September comes around, I start getting the shakes. That's pretty much it. It's really rough week this week for many people, not just myself. Many people. It's anybody that loves this country. It's just tough for, It's for the congressman, for me, for people that love this country, patriots. It's tough. It's a tough holiday.
I call you an unsung hero because you came down to 9/11, the aftermath, and you brought sandwiches to first responders, something that is so simple yet so impactful to those people. What made you think of doing that?
Well, the day when I was watching it on television, like everybody else, I was watching, and I'm in the catering business, so what else would I be able to do? So I picked up the phone that afternoon. I called a friend of mine, and I said, I'm not watching anymore. What do you need done? And he was telling me that all kinds of commanding officers were killed down there, and that they had no food system, and it was in total chaos down there. And I said, I'll bring all my catering trucks. I have a kitchen on wheels. I says, I'll see you in the morning. So me and my crew started preparing all kinds of sandwiches and all kinds of things that I thought we could use down there, and we headed out the next morning.
Congressman Zeldin, you served in Iraq after. What was your decision to go and serve in the Army?
Well, I decided to join the military before 9/11. I was doing Army ROTC at the time. I got commissioned on active duty in 2003 after I graduated school up in Albany. And when I was in Albany actually too on September 11th, 2001, and I was honored to be able to go on to active duty, but I'll tell you, it was almost like a little bit of resentment that I had to wait so long to get onto active duty because there was a feeling that so many Americans had when this happened on September 11th, 2001. We wanted to go do something about it on September 12th, 2001. So it was actually really difficult to wait until May of 2003 to go on to active duty, but I was honored to be on active duty, to still serve. I still serve today in the reserves, and I'm deeply moved by those who they had businesses, people who were leading a particular life, and then on September 12th they go to their local recruitment center and they sign up. And it's also amazing now because over every Christmas week I'll go to Iraq or Afghanistan. I've been doing it for several years in a row. I lead a congressional delegation, and I'm meeting people who are young men, young women who are serving right now who were like 1 year old, 2 years old on September 11th, 2001. So it really has impacted not only those who were alive then, watched on TV, and were moved to service at that moment, but it's also impacted this whole other generation and want to become our nation's next greatest generation. So being in their company too, it's important that we never forget what happened, make sure history doesn't repeat itself, to honor not just those who lost their lives, the families that were impacted, communities that were impacted, but also to pay tribute to lives that were lost in service to our country afterwards, both first responders on the pile and those who deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere afterwards and lost their lives as a result of that.
Yeah, and you both served, and you in such a special way. And when you were down there, first responder actually gave you an American flag. Tell me about that moment.
This was the gentleman that was in charge of the Army division that was in charge of actually letting me into Ground Zero. Oh. So I had to go through a whole bunch of areas, security areas, and I was a civilian. And every block I went, they came on with the dogs, and they went under the vehicle with the mirrors, and we got as far as we could, and it was quite a distance away. And the commanding officer is a customer in my store, and as soon as he sees me, he says, I know this kid for 25 years, let him go. Bring him to the front line, and he made sure I had everything I needed. And a couple of months later, he presented me with a flag that was down there hung in front of the Millennium Hotel. They hung in front of the Millennium Hotel, and he presented it to me, and I presented it to a friend of mine that came into the store whose son was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, and he hung it over his camp, and I hadn't seen him in 3 or 4 years. He had the flag commissioned by President Bush, and he returned it to me 4 years later. So I had a commissioned plaque and the flag returned to me, and I would lend it out to the Hopog Fire Department, anybody that was doing a 9/11 event, because I feel it's not my flag, it's our flag, you know, and anybody that's willing to honor it, and I will not give it to Colin Kaepernick, however.
And this is the flag. I have a picture of the flag with our troops on it.
That's correct.
Holding the flag. Do you know these men?
Yes. 2 of them are sheriffs out in Riverhead, and I see them all the time. Usually by that holiday time, everybody comes and visits. We visit each other, check on each other. See, it's a camaraderie, like Lee has in the service.
Yeah.
It's a camaraderie. You say, hey, you know, I remember what you did that day, and how you doing, and we check up on each other. Unfortunately, a lot of guys are getting sick now, and you know, there's less and less of them around, and they're paying a tremendous price for what they've done, and they're all willing to do it again if they had to.
Absolutely. And this flag means so much to you, yet you lent it, and it has a whole story with it. Why did you decide to donate this flag to all these different groups?
Because you can't hold on to something if you don't give it away. You know, you can't hold on to good things in your life. It meant a lot to me, and I give it to other people that's as patriotic as I am, and as Lee is, and guys that are serving our country, and those are the guys that deserve it every day. You know, you pass it on, and the next generation, the next person that's fighting the fight. You know.
Congressman Zeldin, when did you meet Donato?
Many years ago, there was a annual tradition, I guess, of bringing back so many first responders who were impacted by Donato's volunteerism, courage, selflessness, heroism. Because Donato stepped up in the way that he did, I think I've seen it firsthand that those first responders, they looked up to Donato and admire him and his service and his sacrifice. So it was important for those first responders to annually be able to get together and to say thank you. And so Donato started an organization called Heroes for Our Heroes, and one of those events there took place in front of Panico's Deli in the town of Smithtown. And I remember that a lot of the NYPD leadership was there. Pat Lynch was there, some of our local law enforcement as well. And I think that was the first time that I had a chance to interact with Donato, was one of those annual reunions on September 11th.
Yep. Called Lee's office up, and he was down. Boom. The next day, came in like, you know, a regular guy. I said, wow, this guy's, you know, he's special. I said, this guy's, I told my dad, this guy's special. Most of the politicians, you call him up and they wouldn't give you the time of day. This guy, but he served, he got it. You know, some people get it and some people don't. He definitely gets it.
And Congressman Zeldin, you also brought the flag, and this was at your request, to bring the flag to President Trump recently. Tell me how that all came about, and I have a great picture of the flag and you and the president.
Well, Donato was my special guest at the President's First State of the Union address, and it was, it's tough because you have 700-something thousand people in each congressional district all across our country, and you want to pick the best person to be your guest at that State of the Union address. And you know, now we're coming up on the 15th anniversary that's taking place now throughout this entire week, and it actually ended up becoming a pretty much a no-brainer once we thought of Donato, that he would be the absolute perfect person to have as our guest for the President's First State of the Union address. So when Donato showed up in Washington, he had this flag with him, and he told me all about the story of it. Now he wanted to give it to President Trump. And I was thinking that we might not be able to give it to the president over the course of the next hour. We don't know exactly when he's
Complicated
arriving.
business.
Yeah, we don't know exactly what time he's arriving in the Capitol, whether we'll be able to see him. We were prepared just in case circumstances would allow it to happen. When I spend my time with the president, it's usually last minute. This happened to be very last minute. It was about 12 o'clock one day. I'm down in D.C. and I get a phone call. Can you meet with the president at 12:30?
Wow.
The answer is yes. And logistically, that you would think the first thing that crosses your mind is, how do we get from here to there in time? Because what do we have to move in the schedule? And all I was thinking of was, where's the flag? So go, Katie, go get the flag. So I got the flag, went to the White House. We had our meeting, and during the entire meeting, so next to the Oval Office, there's a meeting where you always see the president will meet with his cabinet officials. That's also where he takes other meetings as well. So that's where I was sitting diagonally from the president at this meeting, and everybody was asking me, everyone around the table was asking me, what's the story of the flag? Everyone loved the story of the flag. After the meeting was over, was an opportunity to be able to present it to the president. And originally, starting to present it to him, we're both standing up. It was a little bit casual, and we're talking about the flag to the president, and you could tell it was, personally, the story was impacting him. He was deeply moved by it. He was moved by Donato's story, the first responders, where the journey of that flag from the Trade Center overseas, being flown over a base to back home, and the president, all of a sudden the setting just wasn't right. It was like, let's go into the Oval Office. He gets behind his desk, the Resolute desk, and as you could see from the smile on his face in that picture that you have there, he was really honored to receive it. He had an aide, said, I want to put this in the museum. And he called over one of his aides, had his aide take all the notes of the story of the flag. So it was cool. So and I've spoken to the president since, where the president has asked how Donato was doing, and so it's a story. Earlier I was talking about how Donato impacted lives of first responders on the pile in the days after 9/11. It's literally 15 years later impacting lives today, where the President of the United States, when he comes back home to New York, he wants to know how Donato's doing, and really honored to have received a flag.
What does that do for you? I know.
Well, it's in the right hands. This man, I think, loves the country more as much as we do, all sitting in this room, and I'm speechless about it. I mean, to pay me an honor like that, there were so many other guys that did so much. You try to be humble in a situation like that. Guys lost their lives and did a lot of sacrificing. To me, I just cooked food. They did the hard work. They did the lifting. I just try to feed them and be my piece of the puzzle. We're not trying to pat yourself on the back too much, because we all had tough times down there, and there's still guys that.
Donato's humble in saying that. I mean, he was in Smithtown, and he was watching on TV. But you also know this, being able to spend some time with him now, and everyone else has had a chance to experience it. If Donato happened to be on the first floor of the Trade Center when the attack happened, there were people, the type of character, values, ethics, beliefs. There were regular, average day men and women who decided to go up those steps while everyone else was coming down.
Yeah.
And Donato's the type of guy, he happened to be in Smithtown, he was watching on TV, but if he was on the first floor of the Trade Center that day, he would have went straight up and started rendering first aid to people, even though he wasn't NYPD or FDNY. Yeah. That's his character.
I'm adopted from them now. They adopted me into their family, the guys, and I speak to them all the time. All the relationships that I made are, to me, unbreakable, and a common feeling of appreciation of what everybody did that day. It makes you want to cry, and a lot of heartbreaking stories. And still going to funerals to this day. Guys that are sick. We went to one last week. Yeah. And anybody that says anything otherwise, these guys were heroes, man. They went down there and it's just unbelievable. You had to actually see it. When you watched it on TV, it was one thing, but when I rounded that corner and I seen the magnitude of this, I mean, each trade center, I don't know if you know, that was its own zip code.
Yep.
I mean, so you're talking about
massive
amounts of, and what always amazed me was that there was not a piece of glass on the ground that I came across, so that was emulsified.
You went down in the weeks. I mean, the recovery took weeks and weeks and months still recovering. But now, at least we have a symbol there of freedom, the Freedom Tower,
Yeah.
and the museum is incredible.
Haven't been. I haven't had the courage to go yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, you'll be in tears. I mean, I was in tears. Let me ask you, though, your foundation, Heroes for Heroes, was born out of this day.
Yes.
You had your deli was in operation for 30 years. You told me recently you closed it, and now Heroes for Heroes is your foundation. Tell me about what you're doing today.
Well, now we want to keep a constant awareness of taking care of our police. These guys put their lives on the line. Our veterans that come back that are disabled, and they're the unforgotten heroes, and they put it all on the line for us, meaning that they come back, and whatever consequences they had from their actions of being heroes seems to be lost. So our organization makes sure that they're not forgotten. Like now we're trying to rebuild a patio at the VA because it means a lot to the guys down there. And it went in from it's down in Northport. And it went from a small project to becoming a massive project. It's probably going to be like $250,000. I'm fighting that fight. I have Nicolak Pavers involved in it. Lee's helping. Everybody's trying to kick some money for it. But it's a big project, for little guys. And there's probably 10 to 15 of us guys behind it that are pushing like crazy. And every year we try to make heroes on 9/11. This will be the first year I'm unable to do it. Little Tommy John surgery, but I hope that in the next year that I get back on my feet and I'm back in there, and the guys don't hold a grudge against me for not feeding them this year. I think they understand.
Well, I know the veterans out in Northport. I've been out there a number of times, and they, anytime you have a guest that comes out there and just spends time with them, they love it. So,
absolutely,
what you're doing for them and for the community is really
well.
Incredible.
It always bothered me that, we have Yankee Stadium's gorgeous. All the fields are great. These guys are complaining about what's going on, and I think what's lost sight is the ultimate sacrifice that these guys have made, and the conditions of these places is, Newsday estimates $268 million to repair the VA down there.
Yeah.
And, they paid the price, and then you won't see them complaining.
No.
They don't complain. These guys are, they got handed a lot of bad decks, and they knew the risk that they had going into what they were doing, and they took it gladly, and they probably would do it again, but I think we owe them to do better for them,
Congressman Zeldin, when you hear this story, and obviously it's an emotional one. It's one of many New Yorkers, many people in this country who were moved by that day and who sprung into action in some way. What comes to mind?
While it's sad to reflect on those whose lives were cut short, there also are so many stories of people who risked everything to help others. Those at that moment, in the minutes afterwards, in the hours afterwards, all of those first responders on the pile, all the people who were coming from all across America begging to be able to have access to help out on the pile. Everyone who that next morning decided to quit whatever they were doing in their life to go join the military. The people who have deployed 10 or 12 times since, missing Christmases and anniversaries and birthdays, they have young kids at home, but continuing to sacrifice that much. Though all the lives that were, thousands of lives that have been lost since then. The way that the Freedom Tower went up in place of where the Trade Center once was. Also, the way that those responsible have been hunted down for justice abroad. The way that freedom wins. And the good guys have united alliances, coalitions all across the world of good versus evil. So we are saddened when we think of 9/11. But I think it's also very important for us to also really look at all the good that came from it too afterwards, where the strength of character, the strength of New Yorkers, the resolve of New Yorkers, the patriotism of Americans all rose up together to ensure that we were stronger somehow as a result of what happened, not weaker.
Donato Panico, a real unsung hero, as I said, and thank you for what you do. Best of luck with Heroes for Heroes, and really an honor to meet you and Congressman Zeldin.
Yep. Thank
Same.
you.
And thank you, and best of luck to you, and stay in touch. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.